Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. Ruckus panel this week includes attorney Steve Marakian, who pays Woody to take some time off every few weeks. Steve is with the law firm of Wersch, Hobbs, and Marakian. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant. Yael Abahaka is a columnist and editorial writer at the Kansas City Star, and Jim Bergfalk is a public affairs consultant with SGB Communications in Kansas City. I'm Mike Shannon. As a longtime resident of Kansas City, Kansas, let me offer a couple of quick observations. First, the community is much improved as a result of consolidation between KCK and Wyandotte County, which began in 1997. Second, those of us who live there are fortunate that the two mayors since consolidation have been committed to ending the corrupt machine politics of the past. Carol Marinovich and Joe Reardon, both Democrats by the way, have set strong examples. The question now is who's next? Mayor Reardon is stepping aside after 2 terms. 5 candidates want the job. 3 are currently on the county commission: Mark Holland, Ann Murguia, and Nathan Barnes. The other 2 are Cordell Meeks and Janice Witt. First question, Mary. Should the rest of the metro area care who the mayor of Kansas City, Kansas is?
Oh, yes, and I think they do care. I mean, we care now because we can go there and go to soccer games and gamble our money away and have a great time. And because I think, because of Carol Marinovich and Mayor Reardon, it's almost become the major metaphor for what urban growth can be like in a city that was in decline. If this is how to do it, it's one way to do it, and it's been so successful. Just explosive change and growth. It's always the question, of course, of who benefits the most from the growth. But sure, we care because more and more we are one united metro area, and the person who has the job of mayor of KCK next. The question is, will they be able to continue the progressive leadership of the last 2 really remarkably successful mayors? And the question is, will it be Mark Holland or Ann Murguia? Those are the 2 leaders, according to everybody who calls themselves an insider in KCK. And the reason for that is they're the 2 with the most experience and the 2 that have a political base. The question is, will Mr. Reardon support Mark Holland strongly?
Do you know any of the candidates? I don't know any of them. I recognize some of the family names, but I wonder how people can get informed about who these people are, what they believe.
No, I mean, it's going to be a race because Joe Reardon left so little time before the primary at the end of February. All 5 candidates are coming in and talk to the editorial board next week, or scheduled to. And really the biggest question I have isn't how you're going to keep everything going out in western Wyandotte County. My question is, what are you going to do in Kansas City, Kansas, and for basically, I'm not going to say the poorest parts, but actually the rest of Wyandotte County, which is mostly in Kansas City, Kansas, which has not been touched specifically by the growth out in western Wyandotte County. Everybody keeps saying, oh, what a great juggernaut this is, and it is an improvement. I understand that. But because it's all tax deferred, basically tax deferred income, that money being supplied there, except for some of the property taxes, a lot of that money is being used to supply and help out Cerner and help out all those other companies out there. So eventually that tax money is going to come back to the inner core, supposedly, and provide better services, better roads, all that kind of stuff. Well, I'd love to see that because since Reardon's been in charge and Marinovich, they've raised taxes. They raised the sales tax. The property tax has not fallen by that much. And so it's still a high tax effort city with all that other stuff going on, which I think is one reason that the population has not exploded as a lot of other places
Jim, you're familiar with Kansas City, Kansas. Do you think it makes any difference to the people of Kansas City, Missouri, and Johnson County who the mayor of Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County is?
It should. But I would say, first of all, the visionary aspects of this are a model for everybody. The courage Carol Marinovich showed to get beaten up by her community. She's a Strawberry Hill girl. And she got beaten up by the people in the East to take the gamble on the West. And sometimes you have to gamble. and they gambled well.
She's like the prophet who is scorned in her own land.
Well, the Field of Dreams thing, but it worked. I mean, it obviously has worked. And I had the benefit of sitting on the commission to pick the casinos, including the one that ended up in Kansas City, Kansas, out in that spot. And the benefits that are going to be derived from that, from the Speedway, from the Legends, from all the other kinds of fiscal activity, have to do exactly what Yale talked about, because that was the promise. That was the promise by Reardon. That was the promise by Carroll. And except for Fairfax, which is a great success story, nothing in the East has really received that kind of boost and benefit. And she took it. Carroll got attacked by David Haley and others very critically when she first did it. And now it's time to reap the benefits. And any of the candidates running of the certain top 2 or 3, I think, are going to be dedicated to that effort. They're in a great position of being able to reap the benefits of other people's courage.
Right.
Talk about a downtown that needs to be revitalized.
Yeah. Revitalized, not the way it did last time.
Steve, I think one of the great messages that people should take from the success of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas, is that the strong mayor form of government can work. That's a strong mayor system. He's not just the mayor of Kansas City, Kansas, or she wasn't just the mayor and CEO.
Oh, I agree. And I've been a proponent of the strong mayor system, or that form of government, as opposed to what some other cities use and so forth, for a long time. I think Carol Marinovich was a prime example of that. I think Joe Reardon has done a good job as well. And I agree with everything's been said here, but particularly with what Yale said, in that I want to see some of this money now coming back to develop Kansas City, Kansas, sort of what I'll call the urban portion. You drive over there today, it's like going into, it's just the stores are boarded up, but there's nothing going on. I want to see development there, and I also want to see physical plant improvements to the schools. Wyandotte High School is a very important part of our tradition and community, and it's falling apart.
Something that we failed to mention was the Google. KCK being selected by Google. I talked to Superintendent Ray Daniels this last week, and he really went on at length about how exciting he thinks that will be in connecting the city and doing some of the things that Jim talked about.
Well, the other part of that, and it shows, again, another example of Metro leadership. Joe Reardon could have held on to that Google thing in KCK exclusively. Said he reached across the border, met with Sly James. They put together this initiative. Who knows what's going to happen with it? But it is that would never have happened in old KCK. Hands across the border would never happen in old KCK.
Let's hope there are lots of town halls and various forums where people can find out about these candidates. I know Nick Haynes is going to have them all on Week in Review. I don't know exactly when. It's not this coming week, I don't believe, but we'll keep you posted on that, certainly. Well, it seems simple. The Congress passes legislation, the president signs it. The legislation becomes law, and we all obey it, whether we like it or not. Well, that's not always the way some Missouri and Kansas legislators see things. They believe the state government has the authority to reject a law under a process known as nullification. Now, we've seen support for that concept recently on issues ranging from the individual health care mandate in Missouri to a proposed measure in Kansas that would make firearms manufactured in the state exempt from federal legislation. The nullification theory precedes the Civil War, and many believe that conflict put it to rest. Apparently, it has reawakened. Some, including KU political scientist Burdett Loomis, says it's a reaction to President Obama, calling it a kind of soft secession. So, Yale, what does the Constitution say about Missouri and Kansas ignoring federal laws they don't like?
It says you can't do it. I mean, you read these constitutional scholars, and all of them, look at the arguments made mostly by the states, and mostly right now, at least, of course, by conservative state leaders going, well, we don't really like that law. We're not going to enforce federal government laws. They try to come and tell us what to do. It's kind of like, well, okay, yeah, obviously Civil War is the one that's brought up, but you also have cases such as, Brown versus Board of Education, and then, actually having black kids go to school with white kids and universities and all that kind of stuff. And we've kind of settled this over the time. If you're going to be a state, you're going to be a member of the United States of America, you see that first word says united? One of the things is there's a Supreme Court. And, again, go look it up. I mean, are these supremacy clauses and all that kind of stuff?
Let me look it up now. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, put it on the screen, and you can see the salient part of it. And by the way, the capitalization is what the framers had in mind. They wrote this. We might quarrel over some of the words that are capitalized. Anyway, it says, the Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Now, Steve, you're an attorney. I know you've focused on constitutional law. Is this idea of nullification some right-wing nutcase theory only, or does it have a legitimate basis in U.S. constitutional history?
Well, in deference to Yale, who was a simple man, but this is not a simple issue. And yes, there is a valid and viable constitutional argument. And the most recent pronouncement by the U.S. Supreme Court tells the whole story. It's in 2009, and I won't read the whole thing, but obviously. We start with the assumption that the historic police powers of the state were not to be superseded by the federal act, meaning legislation, unless there was a clear and manifest purpose of Congress. Now, there's no question about the Supremacy Clause. There's no question that the federal government can pass laws that are binding on the states. However, the 10th Amendment talks about the rights of the states and the federal government being limited. This notion that no matter what the federal government wants to do, it can do, and the states have no right to object or to pass other legislation or to essentially nullify it through their own legislation, it's a very complex issue. And we should not give it short shrift by simply saying, look, if you want to be a state, you do what the feds say. That is not the law. It never has been.
If they pass conflicting legislation, it can be resolved in court, can it not?
It certainly can.
Mary?
Yeah.
Well, you know, we have to be a little more open-minded about this and realize there are parts of the country where people don't like the Constitution, where they never accepted the Constitution. They still like the Articles of Confederation. I mean, there is no constitutional history for nullification, Mike. There's a lot before the Constitution about nullification because they saw themselves as individual countries. This is the language of people who don't like one nation under God, indivisible, freedom and justice for all. They really want to live before the Civil War, and many of their attitudes about other issues would explain that.
Well, let me ask you this. Would anybody here in this panel say, for example, look, that 14th Amendment, let's just not honor that? Or that 13th Amendment. Let's just not. So why do we say that the 10th Amendment, being one of the first 10, the Bill of Rights, which the Supreme Court has repeatedly said are the most important 10, why do we say, let's just forget about that 10th Amendment? Because it's really kind of troublesome.
The rights herein not expressed or reserved to the states and the people respectively, or something like that.
So when the federal government does something, you know, maybe that right hasn't been reserved for that.
But we don't know exactly what that means, do we? I mean,
and that's so much. Therein is the argument.
I mean, you know, if you pass a piece of legislation in the state legislature that has one sentence, I guarantee you legal people on both sides are going to be fighting it for 20 years.
That's exactly
and the
right.
courts ultimately decide these things. But it becomes a practical issue of, we spent probably 75 years as a country totally divided over this constitutional issue, and leading up to the Civil War, and if we had dealt with it properly, we might not have had a Civil War. We dealt with, and then the crisis seems to be resolved and it fades away for a while. Then we ended up going through the same process until we had rampant segregation. I mean, I spent some time in Mississippi in the 60s on voter registration, and I don't want Mississippi deciding whether or not people get to vote or not. So, you know, to Yale's point in his editorial, he was absolutely right. If you're a sheriff, if you're a peace officer, and you can't abide by the Constitution, resign.
And with that, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we got to move on. We're way behind. Staying with state legislatures, Republican lawmakers in Jeff City are coming forward with tax-cutting ideas of their own, following plans for major tax cuts across the border in Kansas. The concern from Missourians is that businesses will move, the Show Me state will lose revenue, and the revenue stream will become like a trickle. Lee's Summit Republican Will Kraus is backing a bill that would cut the top income tax rate from 6% to 5%, create a 25% tax deduction for business income, and cut the corporate tax in half over 36 months. We see economic competition between Missouri and Kansas on the rise, and of course we see that play out frequently in our metro area. And Jim, you've been around all of this for a long time. What's your assessment of these battles between states and counties and cities?
Well, first of all, you know, this is not an issue that is going to be resolved by what tends to get passed in Topeka and Jeff City. under the guise of the metro battles. There isn't a lot of companies in St. Louis that are being attracted to East St. Louis, okay? The issue of what happens in western Kansas or what happens in mid-Missouri by a corporate income tax doesn't have much impact on whether somebody goes to Johnson County, Wyandotte County, or Jackson County. Those battles are battles fought over who has the right toolbox at the right time and the right tools in the toolbox. There are ample tools in the toolbox on both sides of the metro to attract or not attract people. There's a whole mixture of things that go into this. And part of the problem is that I could make a case that we could attract a whole bunch of people from a vast industry to this area because we already have things in place except for workforce. I could make a case that a lot of companies would come to Missouri and Kansas but for other issues that have nothing to do with tax breaks. What's happening in Jeff City is an excuse to reduce corporate income tax, period. What happened in Topeka was an excuse to reduce corporate income tax, period. The net result is then there isn't enough money for education. And everybody that I've ever talked to that I represent as clients who want to come to this metro area are confronted by workforce and education.
Do you agree with that the only purpose, the only reason for these tax cuts was to help business?
No. I mean, it's clearly there to help business.
Well, yeah.
I think the overarching
But that's not antithetical to the needs of the state.
The overarching theme and the question we've all raised is whether or not it's going to work. The idea is, sort of the Brownback approach and this approach that they're talking about in Missouri, the idea is, okay, can you generate economic activity? Can you generate more revenue for the state? Can you attract businesses and so forth by reducing corporate income tax, by reducing individual income taxes? If you can, and the money then flows in, then you don't have all these deficits. Yeah. If you can't, then of course you have a problem.
I've got something Yale will love. Did you read the New York Times article I sent you?
Yes.
What New York Times article? No, but it talks about economic incentives for businesses.
Right. Yeah.
It says giving incentives is no guarantee of a long-term relationship with the company. This was based on a rather lengthy study. And according to the New York Times, states, counties, and cities are giving up more than $80 billion a year to companies in these tax deals.
That's true, and you saw Applebee's, which went from Missouri to Kansas back to Missouri, just as an example.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and all these the things that Jim talked about, a lot of these gifts to companies are to get them to move from one side of the state line to the other. Okay, and to Steve's point, if you've noticed what Brownback's been doing recently is, some of those tax rates are going down, but he's taking away some of the tax deductions. Sure. So eventually, the tax break you were going to get from living in Kansas is not going to be as big as people thought. And now I will ultimately agree with you. I'm not against cutting taxes. I am against cutting taxes too far. And I think they've done it too far in Kansas, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Got to move on. Unless you've been in a convent, and probably even then, you've heard the news that the ban on women serving in combat is being lifted in the U.S. military. Kansas City Star columnist Mary Sanchez, a frequent guest on KCPT's Kansas City Week in Review program, says military women's greatest ongoing battle now will be slowly gaining their due respect from more of their male peers. In other words, as the headline of her column put it, women are ready for combat. Are men ready for change? Let's ask the only West Point graduate on the panel, Steve Marakian. Are men ready for change?
Well, the answer is absolutely yes. The military has changed dramatically since my days in the military, but I still have very close contacts with it, and I served in a combat unit, and I know what's going on in combat units. Ms. Sanchez's comments are not out of line. Getting the acceptance of women in combat units is going to be difficult, but that's going to come only if the military does this the right way, which means that they cannot lower standards for combat units in order to accommodate the fact that women have physical difficulties achieving certain standards.
And the military says it will not do that, right?
And this is why I do not oppose this. In fact, I favor it. If women going into combat, and keep in mind, women are in combat zones already. But those are not combat units, okay? There are myriad problems of integrating women into a combat unit.
And if they can't have these jobs, they don't have the same chance for promotion as men.
That's true, but again, the answer is, and this is why I favor the opportunities, for those women, and believe me, it's going to be very few, for those few who want to be in a combat unit and who can meet all the physical requirements, which are enormous, great. and then they'll be accepted in. If they can't meet the physical requirements, they will not be accepted into those units.
You in favor of this, Mary?
I'm the only one on the panel who's been in a convent.
And you've heard about this, haven't you?
I heard about
this.
this.
I knew it.
Back when I was in the convent. Well, no, this is another really important step forward for women on the path of equality that the president so eloquently laid out in his inaugural address last week. But, you know, really, 230,000 new job categories in the military are going to be opening up to us. It's not going to be the rare woman that can. I couldn't climb up the face of a mountain with all that stuff. I never have been able.
You didn't learn that in the convent?
No, did a lot of manual labor, but not that sort.
Stealing.
But women have been dying. 130 women have died in the Afghan-Iraqi conflict so far. And this is going to be like gays in the military. A week later, everybody's going to say, what was the big fuss about?
Now, speaking of gays, the Boy Scouts of America is likely to relax its rule against gays and will allow gay scouts and gay scout masters. I suppose you were an Eagle Scout.
I was not. However, I was a Scoutmaster, and I have 4 sons who were Eagle Scouts.
Well, what do you think about this?
I'm in favor of it, and I think it's high time. Scouting has always been, it's not a religious organization. It's an organization that's designed to develop citizenship. It's designed to teach young men how to become better older men. The notion that someone who is gay cannot be a good role model for a boy, and the notion that someone who is gay cannot be a good citizen is nonsense. I think the only thing that bothers me about what Scouts are doing is, I don't want to see this piecemeal. I don't want to see it left up to local organizations. It ought to be a national policy. If you're a Scoutmaster, if you're a Scout, whatever, your conduct controls. If you misbehave, you're out.
But they can legally not have gays or gay Scoutmasters because it's a private organization and the courts have ruled they can do it.
But this is a good step forward.
Exactly. Now, Yale, your thoughts?
I agree with Steve that it ought to be national. Now, they've already said it's not going to be, so we'll see. But as we were talking about this morning, the big thing is, okay, you're going to scout camp, and here come some groups that are, here come some groups that aren't. I think essentially and eventually the ostracization process will work to a degree that, well, wait a minute, no, we all need to be. So I think there's going to be pressure put on the groups the church-related groups more than likely, that have helped sponsor a lot of these groups to go pro-gay, I guess, and allow gay members in. And, 5-10 years from now, it's going to be open, I think, the most.
And apparently pressure from some major sponsors of Boy Scouts is what's behind this.
The Catholic bishops, for example, have put out a statement saying that they hope that the Scouts will go by the Judeo-Christian values. Well, I think this is a Judeo-Christian value. It values every child the same and allows them to have these great opportunities.
But I agree with Yale. It'll be very complicated, and with you as well, to not have a national policy and just leave it up to individuals.
I don't think it'll be workable.
Yeah,
because of exactly what Yale just said.
As I've been trying to indicate, this discussion is over because it's time now for Roast and Toast, where each Rockette tells it like it is or like he or she thinks it is. And we begin tonight with Yale.
Well, I guess this has to be a toast to the Johnson County DA, Steve Howe, who's out there with a little finger in the dike trying to tell all the public officials that, no, you really can't keep breaking the Kansas Open Meetings law. And then when he after he's wagged his finger at him, goes, now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to make you attend some meetings about obeying the Kansas Open Meetings law. The most recent is Jeff Myers, the football coach turned mayor of Shawnee, who, essentially broke the law but didn't break it enough that he could be punished. And unfortunately, there's not really that much punishment anyway, so open meetings law in Kansas needs to be strengthened.
Roast and toast, a toast to the American people, and from all the polls that are being taken in the last week or so, strong support for the president's inaugural address. And all of his emphasis on the shared values, the shared beliefs of freedom and liberty and justice in our country, but also a roast to Steve Rose, who was substituting for Woody last week. Steve said that the address was negative and partisan, and he thought the president should reach out to Republicans. And my response to Steve would have been, where were you in the last 4 years, Steve, when all the reaching out was being done? I think the president gave a speech about the future.
He was in Mission Hills.
Yeah, I guess this is a toast in a sense. When people ask me my political label, I say I'm a pragmatic progressive. And I consider immigration reform progressive. and I consider what's going on right now as pragmatic. And so if both parties can allow pragmatism, which is another word for compromise, to work, we may have an immigration bill.
My toast is for the Leawood-based Church of the Resurrection. At the President's inaugural prayer service a couple weeks ago, Pastor Adam Hamilton delivered a message of love and unity by calling upon all of us to be one nation, united and dedicated to principles of decency and compassion for each other. CORE donated its entire $1.3 million Christmas Eve offering to the needy. This Sunday, CORE is going to collect and then distribute 40 tons of food on one Sunday. Under Adam Hamilton's guidance, the CORE congregation has demonstrated the daily kind of compassionate conservatism that a guy like me can love.
And finally, goodbye to former governor and vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin at Fox News. Palin is ending her association as a commentator and analyst after a 2-year stint. There have been persistent rumors of discord between Palin and Fox News management. But many of us are confident that despite this change, we're going to continue hearing a lot about and from Sarah Palin.
You betcha!
I thought she was taller. Coming up next, an hour-long special edition of The Local Show, taking a look at the Greater Kansas City Chamber's Big 5 initiatives 1 year after their introduction. And be sure to watch Kansas City Week in Review Friday evening at 7:30. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the Ruckus crew, Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.